Tires and the feasibility of reusing tires. Tires are an extremely complicated modern marvel of engineering, and I think a base level of understanding is required to get anything from this presentation, so while I won't dive too deep, here is all you need to know. First, the word grip, otherwise referred to as traction, is the coefficient of friction between the tire and the road surface. As you are likely aware, tires are the only thing on a car that actually touches the road, and they create grip in two ways. For one, the rubber generates friction as they roll along the road surface, but tires also have a tread pattern, and while we won't get into the specifics of tread patterns and how they work, just understand that the pattern allows the tire to make another form of grip called mechanical grip. Tire tread essentially allows the tire to function as if it were a gear meshing with the road's surface, which provides mechanical leverage against the uneven bits of the road while effectively increasing the surface area of the tire, while also acting as a path for water to escape from underneath the tire, reducing the chance of hydroplaning. Tread also deals with various kinds of road debris, like small rocks or mud. However, this is really only beneficial on rougher terrain or off-road, and it is detrimental on a completely flat surface like a racetrack or even just polished concrete where the tread can't actually dig into anything to increase grip. Moving on, it is important to understand that literally all of the control you have over the entirety of your vehicle's weight and where that weight is going relies on these 4 small patches of rubber tire tread. What that effectively means is tires are the limiting factor. Therefore, better tires allow everything about the car to be better. You get better handling, better acceleration, and importantly, better deceleration, which means of course that you get a shorter braking distance, making the vehicle safer as a whole. Tires are quite literally the most important safety feature on any car. The likelihood of you stopping in time to avoid an accident or being able to dodge the accident entirely relies on good tires and their ability to give you predictable and consistent control over your vehicle. This is the case no matter what vehicle you are in, and since lives depend on good tires, this means tires must adhere to extremely high standards of performance and be nearly perfectly reliable. This is the point of going over this. Tires are extremely important to your safety, and they have very high standards of performance that they must live up to at all times. Now, tire wear is important going forward as well, as it is the main factor in tire longevity and tire reliability, but there's some important material science to consider too, so I want to quickly show you this. This is a simulator, and this car is being pushed well past the limits of its tire grip. The car is constantly sliding as it makes its way down this mountain road, and I want you to notice several very specific things here and keep them in mind for later. Focus on how the tires stretch and bend beneath the weight of the car, and think about what you know about elastic and plastic deformation. Consider how tires spring back from anything they encounter, and that they're doing this constantly as they roll and deform. This produces heat at all times, and the heat only increases as the tire rolls faster. Now look at the live data here and watch. The heat generated from both friction and deformation combined cause the tires to overheat over the course of several minutes, eventually melting rubber off of the tire. Until that point, however, they will perform near flawlessly. Something else to keep in mind, the road is like coarse sandpaper. You surely tripped and scraped your knee on concrete before. Now imagine what these tires are going through under the immense weight of this 4-door sedan, constantly deforming, all while being quite literally sanded down as they slide. Ultimately here, I want you to take away this. What you're watching is non-stop abuse, and these tires are just standard tires, the kind found in all cheap base model cars. Your real-life car is likely on tires that are not far from these at all, and there's absolutely nothing special about them. Yet still, after all this abuse, they haven't even overheated yet. This is the level of reliability and performance expected from all tires, even at the most basic level. Now let's get into what it takes to make something this high performance a reusable product, and what consequences may arise from doing just that.
For some context, you should be aware that the tire industry is an absolutely massive global industry. As of 2022, it was valued at $245.53 billion US, and that number will likely be nearing upwards of $400 billion by 2030. This, of course, means people have already raised this question, and reusable tires already exist to an extent. So before getting into theoretical, 100% reusable tires, let's quickly go over what already exists. However, before we can get to that, we also need to go over the basics of tire construction. You've likely gathered that a tire is not just a squishy rubber balloon, and in fact, tires are a much more complex, decently rigid, steel-reinforced combination of several materials. We can't get into explaining every part in depth, but it is necessary for you to understand that tires are essentially divided up into 2 main sections. The inner airtight structural casing, which itself is made up of a combination of materials including steel bands that help ensure the tire treads hold its shape, and then the exterior layer of tire tread, which is the part that actually contacts the road, and it is primarily made up of rubber. Sometimes multiple different kinds of rubbers are used for different sections of tread. Regardless, this means the tread is the part that deals with almost all the wear, and the tread effectively protects the inner casing. Since a tire stops making effective grip once this tread layer is worn down, and this happens long before the tread layer is completely worn through, tires are always replaced before the inner casing begins to take any damage, meaning the inner casing is typically still in near perfect condition by the end of the tire's useful life. This fact presents a fairly straightforward method of reusing a tire, where you take a used tire and simply replace the outer tread layer. This process entirely reuses the inner casing and is called retreading. Retreading is currently the primary method for reusing tires. As a result, retreaded tires are fairly common, especially on large semi-trucks and other fleet vehicles. And this is because retreaded tires are half, if not a third, of the cost of new tires. Generally, a casing can be retreaded 4 times before it is deemed too much of a safety risk to retread again. Thus, retreading also significantly reduces waste on top of costing less than a new tire. The process of retreading involves heating the old tire, adding new rubber, then forming a new tread with the mold. But it isn't quite that simple, and this is because of what was mentioned in regards to the high standards tires must adhere to. Since a tire must be perfectly reliable, the inner castings you retread cannot be damaged in any way, and they essentially need to be perfect to ensure the final product can achieve those safety, reliability, and performance standards. This means a significant amount of used tires are not safe to be retreaded, so retreading is far from a 100% reusable solution, and it can never achieve that, no matter how perfect the process becomes because of another issue. The rubber in tires ultimately hardens over time, and undergoes a process called dry rotting, where it becomes hard, brittle, and cracks apart, so no matter what, tires will always get to a point where they eventually cannot be reused.
Luckily, tires were recyclable. However, it's not easy and very energy intensive. Machines must be used to separate the steel and other materials out from the rubber. And regardless of how this is done, the rubber is going to be full of impurities. It's worth pointing out you also have to transport your used tires to a tire recycling center. And there also needs to actually be a recycling center that deals with tires properly in your area for you to even have this option. This is a major factor that leads to tires ending up in landfills. On top of that, some places, especially less developed countries, don't have the ability to recycle their tires whatsoever. However, this is slowly changing as more people are figuring out more low-tech ways of handling the recycling process. As a result of these recycling logistic problems, many people have proposed ways of fully reusing tires, reinventing them to avoid these issues. However, the tires have essentially evolved over time to be the best at what they do, and there are almost zero alternative methods of doing what tires do without serious problem. We really should not reinvent tires. Furthermore, our cars and all of the corresponding vehicle industries are also entirely built around tires and how they currently work, and to change how tire functions means we would need to fundamentally reinvent cars, their infrastructure, and their industries. And at this point, we're not solving any current issues and just making vehicles less useful. One of the only truly feasible solutions to reusable tires problem is a tire that is still a tire, but 100% made from recyclable materials, and itself easily recyclable. We're already making progress in this direction, as several companies already utilize recycled material in tire construction, while also predicting and in some cases directly demonstrating that 100% recycled material tire which can achieve current tire performance standards is possible, so it is very likely this is the future.
The consequences of achieving 100% reusable tires via recycling. This becomes a material science problem at its core. Tires becoming more recyclable would likely involve lots of change to the tire design. We may still need steel, but as a completely separate internal structure, not permanently molded within the rubber. We could do away with steel, developing something like a stiffer rubber that could achieve what steel achieves, but that will not be easy, especially with the increasing weight of modern-day vehicles. Maybe that will force vehicles to become lighter. But regardless of how this is done, the question remains, what will this all mean for tires themselves? Considering how tires are already always a compromise between things like longevity versus performance, on-road versus off-road, snow versus summer, etc., I think it is safe to say reusable tires will likely be a significant further compromise no matter what. Some of our current standards may need to change, but a major problem we may face will be that achieving better recyclability, tires will likely have to become biodegradable. Currently, tires are not biodegradable. They do degrade, but they do not simply melt away into nice natural elements that are harmless in the same way as something like paper or food waste. You are more aware of tire pollution than you think. Everywhere you look, you can quite literally see it. However, you may be unaware of what this actually means for the environment. A 2017 study estimated that 1.5 million metric tons of tire particles enter the U.S. environment every year. And these tire particles account for 5 to 10% of ocean pollution, contributing to the problem of both microplastics and nanoplastics pollution. This is something that we will have to consider when making more recyclable tires, and it might become even more important if the tires have worse material properties, wear faster, and generally deposit more rubber into the environment. This is of course something that's hard to predict, but the environmental impact will never not be important. I believe tires will have to become more biodegradable and environmentally friendly as we come closer to making them 100% recyclable and reusable. In the end, the major sacrifices will likely be performance, but it won't be massive enough to merit changes to things like speed limits, and of course, longevity will likely be much worse. If a tire is easier to break down and recycle, then it will wear down quicker than what we have now. There's no getting around it.
There will be trade-offs. These will likely include more waste getting into the environment from the increased wear rate, biodegradability will be more important/necessary, and the practicality and luxury that we enjoy with current tires may become a thing of the past. Things like tires lasting an average of 5 to 10 years before dry rotting, depending on the climate, or how tires last 60 to 75,000 miles before needing replacement due to wear. Even if they last more than half as long, this will change how tires and our society functions around them. Maybe changes like this make semi-trucks less viable, for example. It'll be more expensive for them to be maintained, as their tires will need replacing much more often, but maybe tires will also be cheaper. It is unclear exactly what fully recycled tires will cost, due to the overhead of the recycling and old tire transport processes being different than what we have now. And it also isn't something factored into the price of modern tires regardless. If retreading is anything to go off of, we could see significant reductions in pricing, but it is hard to say. We may see less reliability, meaning more need for spare tires, but maybe we'll find ways of making it so tires are easier to change, or just less likely to leave us stranded in the first place, now that there's more necessity for it. Maybe prototype technology like tires that have an internal structure and don't need air will become the standard. And maybe things like that will directly allow lower performance materials to be used, again reducing cost and reducing the likely environmental impact all at the same time. In the end, because of how critical tires are to everything right now, 100% reusability via recycling is likely still a long ways out. A lot will have to change before we reach that goal, but at least it seems to actually be a real industry goal, which should be completely achievable if we're willing to take the engineering challenge and adapt to the changes that come with 100% recyclable, reusable tires.